I'm Janet Morena, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to Just Ask Janet. Well, this episode is going to be kind of fun for all of you to gather some of the children around. If they're still awake, call them by your computer or whatever device you watch us on streaming, because we're going to have two beautiful stories for Christmas. And this is a great opportunity for you also to maybe do some Christmas shopping at our online store at prolifeproducts.org, where we have not one, not two, not three, but four beautiful Christmas books for children. Well, the first book I'm going to tell you about is called The Beggar and the Bluebird, written by Anthony DeStefano, one of our executives here at Priests for Life. Beautiful, beautiful story. And it has beautiful illustrations by Richard Cowdery, who's a New York Times best seller illustrator. It's a beautiful story. It's about this cute little bluebird. So let's watch now while we listen to the story of The Beggar and the Bluebird.
The Beggar and the Bluebird by Anthony DeStefano. Illustrated by Richard Cowdery. Read by the author. Once upon a time, there was a bluebird who lived in the city. Like most birds, he flew south every winter to avoid the freezing weather. But one year, he had so much fun soaring above the big buildings and swooping down through the streets that he lost track of time and left much later in the season than he should have. It was already Christmas Eve, and the bluebird knew the first winter snowstorm was about to blow through. Just before the bird departed, though, he flew down into the park to eat some birdseed that was thrown by a poor beggar. The beggar was sitting on a bench as he tossed the seeds onto a dirt pathway. He had crutches and seemed like a nice man, so the bluebird started talking to him. He told him that he was flying south for the winter so he could enjoy the warm sunshine and sing all day long. The beggar looked at him and smiled. Then he asked the bluebird to do him a small favor. "Little bird," he said, "there's a homeless man I know on the other side of the city. He hasn't eaten for days and is very hungry. I have a loaf of bread that was given to me by a kind person this morning. I can't walk very well with these crutches. Will you please deliver the bread to him so he has something to eat?" "But I can't," the bluebird responded. "I have to fly south for the winter. It's already getting cold and I can't survive the first frost." But the beggar persisted. "Please do me this favor. The old man is starving and needs help. If you don't give him this food, he may get very sick." So the bluebird agreed. He flew off with the bread to the other side of the city and thought, "I hope this won't take too long." When he finally found the homeless man, he dropped the loaf of bread into his lap. "It's a miracle," the man cried out as he began to hungrily eat the bread that had fallen from the sky. When the bluebird returned to the beggar, he told him how happy the old man was. He was about to set off for the south when the beggar asked him another question. "Little bird," he said, "there's a young widow I know who lives in a small, shabby house nearby. She has 2 children and she's very poor. I have a few dollars that were just given to me. Can you bring them to this woman? She needs the money more than I do." "Oh, but I can't," the bluebird replied. "It's getting very cold now, and the sky is looking frosty. I simply must leave for the south." But once again, the beggar told the bluebird how much the young woman needed help. And once again, the bluebird agreed. So off he flew to the house where the widow lived and tapped on her door with his wings. When the woman opened the door, the bird dropped the money into her hands and flew away. The poor lady couldn't believe it. "This must be a gift from heaven," she cried. "Now I can buy a Christmas present for my children." The bluebird flew back to the beggar and told him he had given the widow the money. "But now I really have to go," he said. "I simply must fly south." He could feel the frost beginning to form in his wings and could see a storm was moving into the city. Once again, though, the beggar pleaded with him to do one final favor. "I know a sick boy in a hospital a few blocks away," he told the bird, "and he has just about given up hope. He thinks everyone has abandoned him." The beggar pulled a small gold cross from his pocket. "This was given to me long ago," he said. "If you bring it to the boy, it might make him understand that he's not alone, that God loves him." But this time the bluebird insisted that he could not make the delivery. "Don't you see? It's already starting to snow," he cried. "And if I don't leave this second, I'm going to get caught in the storm and freeze." "But this won't take long," the beggar assured him, "and it will bring so much comfort to the little boy. Please help him." The bluebird was frightened, but he was sorry for the child. No one should feel alone, especially at Christmas, he thought, and maybe I could fly extra fast. So flapping his wings as swiftly as he could, the bluebird flew like a shot through the city. When he arrived at the hospital, he could see the boy sitting on his bed, alone and sad. He tapped on the window with his beak. The boy looked over curiously. The winter storm had begun, and the bird was already covered in snow. The boy opened the window, and the bird carefully placed the cross in his hand. The boy didn't understand, but he realized that the bird was giving him something very special. As the bird flew off the ledge, the boy smiled at him, amazed at the gift he had received. By now, the bluebird was very tired. He struggled to fly back to the beggar through the driving snow, which had now become a blizzard. But he was so weak he could barely keep his eyes open. When he finally landed on the ground next to the beggar, he closed his wings tightly around his little body in an attempt to keep out the icy wind. But it didn't do any good. He was freezing and exhausted. He knew now that he would never see the South. The beggar looked at him with love. "Are you sorry that you stayed to help those poor people?" he asked. The bluebird thought for a second. "No," he answered, shivering. "I'm glad I was able to make them happy at Christmas. But now I just have to go to sleep." Then the bird closed his eyes and lay flat and still on the cold ground. The beggar looked down at him and said, "Little bird, you were willing to sacrifice yourself in order to give others the gift of hope. But you will not die." The beggar stood up and dropped his crutches. His old, tattered coat slipped to the ground. Then, one by one, the pieces of dark, dirty clothing began to fall from his body. He started to grow larger, and suddenly 2 huge white wings sprouted from his back, and a dazzling white light began to shine round his face. The beggar was not a beggar at all, but an angel. The angel picked up the bluebird, cupping him softly in his hands. He looked at him and said, "You will never die, but will sing your song forever." Then he spread his wings and leaped into the air, flying upward through the snow. Soon they were high above the clouds. The sun was shining brightly, and the angel flew toward it. The bluebird, who had been sleeping, felt the light from the sun on his face and woke up. He was amazed to see how beautiful the sunlit sky looked. "It's so warm," he whispered. "I must be in the South." Then the angel released him, and the bluebird flew into the sunshine, singing and happily flapping his wings.
What a beautiful story, isn't that? And such a happy ending. That bluebird sacrificed so much, but then at the end got the reward. He was in the sunshine and the warmth. And so hopefully this will be a good story for you to read to children at Christmas time, to take a break from all that holiday hustle and bustle, to pause and think about what we should be doing to help others this holiday season. So The Bluebird and the Beggar is available at our online store at priestforlife.org. Please go there and order a copy today. Now, of course, Anthony DeStefano wrote another brand new children's book for Christmas, and this one is called Joseph's Donkey. You know, when you think of the Holy Family or the nativity scenes, there's always some animals in the scene, in the stable, right? Sometimes you see a cow and a sheep, and there's always a donkey there too. Well, this story is about Joseph's donkey. So let's take a listen to this one.
Joseph's Donkey by Anthony DeStefano. Illustrated by Juliana Kolosova. Read by the author. Joseph was a carpenter who lived in Galilee, in a town called Nazareth, a short way from the sea. Honest, kind, and always fair, he hardly said a word. Work and prayer and silence were the things that he preferred. But Joseph's cart was filled with wood, just loaded to the brim. What he needed was a donkey, big and strong like him. So to the market Joseph went. He looked around and saw a dozen noisy donkeys shout, "Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw!" But in the corner by himself, a quiet donkey stood, looking brave and strong and silent, like a donkey should. Joseph saw his noble face and loved him at first sight. He bought the donkey on the spot and rode him home that night. The donkey didn't disappoint. He did what he was told. He worked as much as Joseph, and his heart was good as gold. He knew that donkeys only live for 30 years or less. He didn't want to waste his time in idle laziness. And so he worked for several months, the best months of his life. But nothing matched the joy he felt when he met Joseph's wife. Mary was a perfect girl, graceful, pure, and sweet. When Joseph's donkey saw her smile, he knelt before her feet. Joseph took him to the side and said to him that day, "You must protect my wife should any danger come her way." The donkey nodded thoughtfully and made a silent vow. "Although I'm very meek and shy, I'll do my best somehow." Soon after this, the donkey learned the lady he adored was pregnant with a baby boy, Jesus Christ the Lord. Then from Rome came urgent news. A census was proclaimed. People had to travel to the towns from which they came. To Bethlehem the donkey went, with Mary on his back. Joseph walked in front of them to keep them all on track. They found a humble stable there, clean and dry and warm. With starlight shining down on them, the Son of God was born. But not far off, there lived a king whose jealous heart was filled with so much hatred for the babe, he tried to have him killed. The frightened family fled at once to find a place to hide. They stayed in Egypt several years until the bad king died. Arriving home at Nazareth, the four was safe at last. Joseph went to work again, and several more years passed. The donkey worked beside him too, hauling stones and wood, and bearing Jesus on his back throughout his childhood. Jesus loved the donkey so. He rode him every day to places he could be alone and close his eyes and pray. The donkey watched the child there, so holy and devout. He knew he had to be from God. Of that there was no doubt. When the boy was 12 years old, the family packed their things. They journeyed to Jerusalem, the ancient land of kings. Jesus rode upon his friend, and when no one could hear, he leaned down low and whispered this into the donkey's ear. A different donkey years from now will take me here again, and I will suffer greatly then, but rise to life. Amen. This secret made the donkey sad, and tears rolled down his cheek. He didn't show the child, though, or even try to speak. They worshipped at the Temple Mount, a wondrous sight to see. Then they started traveling back with all their family. Jesus was among the crowd, or so they thought at first. But he was nowhere to be found, and Joseph feared the worst. Returning to Jerusalem in panic and despair, they searched 3 days but couldn't find the child anywhere. Just then the donkey's eyes grew wide, as if he'd seen a light. I know the place to look, he thought. I'm sure I must be right. Recalling all the times he watched the boy alone at prayer, he raced up to the Temple Mount and finally found him there. The boy was sitting in a group. The sun shone on his head. The elders of the temple were amazed by what he said. Although the donkey never spoke and hardly made a sound, he had to somehow tell his master Jesus had been found. Hee-haw, 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 he cried, till Joseph heard at last. He and Mary soon arrived before too long had passed. Where have you been? His parents asked, relieved but still upset. He answered, in my Father's house, or don't you know me yet? The four were glad to get back home, the donkey most of all. Days and months and years went by. The little boy grew tall. As Jesus grew, the donkey aged. He passed his 30th year. He lost his sight, his legs got lame. The end seemed drawing near. He tried to limp across the field where he had always run. He fell 3 times and realized then his walking days were done. He carried Jesus many years when Jesus was a child. Now Jesus carried him back home so he could rest a while. Jesus sighed and said to him, I know it's getting dark. You've finished your great mission, and on mine I'll soon embark. Then Mary rubbed the donkey's neck and kissed him on his head. She gave him something cold to drink and offered him some bread. Joseph sat by his old friend and whispered lovingly, I've been your master many years, but now I set you free. When you arrive at heaven's gate, please wait a while for me. I'm growing very old myself, and won't be long, you'll see. Then Jesus looked at him and said, My arms and hands take hold. O good and faithful servant, fear not the dark or cold. For in my Father's kingdom are fields of green and gold, with miles and miles to run in, and happiness untold. Just close your eyes now gently. Be faithful and be bold. Open them again now, and then, my friend, behold.
Another beautiful, beautiful story by Anthony DeStefano, Joseph's Donkey. Again, available at our online store at prolifeproducts.org. And when you go there, you will see 4 beautiful Christmas books we're offering, children's books that Anthony DeStefano has written. So it's Little Star, The Grumpy Old Ox, The Beggar and the Bluebird, and Joseph's Donkey. And there's a very big special. You can have all 4 books. You can buy them individually if you'd like, because maybe you already have Little Star or another one. So you could buy them individually, but there's a very big special, all 4 books for just a $50 donation to our ministry. So again, purchase these beautiful books for Christmas at prolifeproducts.org. This is Janet Miranda, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Thank you for joining us. God bless.
I will be silent no more. I'm free from the